turns out that we talked about Barak. So this is cool. And Deborah, that's great. Deborah's a woman prophet, and the man of God, Barak, is appointed as a judge. And the judge is not somebody with a gavel or making any rule. He is the one that God has pointed out to rise up at a moment in time when the country needs a leader, usually a military leader. And that is what a judge does. So now let's see, how is this looking on yours? Is it out of?
Yeah, it's kind of over the top.
Yeah.
Like you're zoomed in or something.
Yeah. Well, let's just look at the picture and I'll deal with it. So the people, there were long periods of peace and even longer periods of war, and the war was usually as a result of the fact that the Israelites had not done what God wanted them to do. And so they would fight. They would need to fight other nations who would invade their country. And these other nations generally were technologically advanced compared to the people in Israel. So these things, the main thing they had was chariots. And let's see if I can shrink this. Okay. Anyway, so there was a time when they were invaded by another country, and the prophet for Israel was a woman named Deborah, which is extremely unusual. There are only 2 women prophets mentioned in the entire Old Testament. And people came to her for advice. A prophet would pray and then tell people what they probably should do with their lives. That's what a prophet did. They also would tell the nation what God wanted. So one day, at God's insistence, she sent for a man named Barak, and she told him that God had said that Barak was to fight King Jabin's army. Now, Barak was terrified of all those chariots, but Deborah insisted that God had promised that Barak would win. So Barak said, "I'm not used to going unless you, Deborah, go with me." And she agreed. So here is a woman going to war. Actually, the woman who's the mastermind of the war, the general, if you will. Barak is merely an agent. So we have Ann Dunham and her husband who named their son Barack Obama from this story. I wonder what about this story caused her to do this, or him. Kind of the quality of Barak's relationship with his mother, or a woman of authority. It's just kind of interesting, and I can't answer this question. I have no idea why they did this, but Barak is an unusual name, and she, I think, was very much aware of where this came from in the Bible. Anybody have any suggestions about this? No? Anybody out there?
Read Michelle Obama's memoir? I wonder if she mentioned it.
Pardon?
I said, has anybody read Michelle Obama's memoir published
I
last
have.
year? I wonder if she mentioned it.
She just mentioned what the relationship was like. Her Ann Dunham married a man from Nigeria, discovered after giving birth to children that he didn't have the power to marry her because he was already married back in Nigeria. So she divorced him. She married again and divorced that person. But basically finished out her life raised him as a single mom for the most part, finished out sort of things in Hawaii. And she became I think it was an archaeologist.
What?
So, and in the memoir by Michelle, she would just go and visit them. They would usually spend Christmas with them, with that part of the family. Well, let's move on. Then Deborah said something very curious. She said, "Women will win this war." King Jabin's general, the man named Sisera, waited with his chariots in a valley below a tall hill. So you can sort of see that here in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of the chariots there. And Barak brought his volunteer fighters, and everyone volunteered then, to the top of the hill, where they were safe really from the chariots, because they just couldn't manage the steepness of the slope. So they were up and the chariots were down, and Deborah commanded, her voice yelled, "Charge!" And the army ran down the hill because they were headed toward the chariots. So each person felt they were probably going to die. And then suddenly a hard rain came, making the chariot no longer really useful. It got the ground so muddy and soft that they could not move the chariots with ease or at all. And then they were attacked, this foreign soldier, at least foreign soldiers on their soil. And because they couldn't, they were kind of at the mercy of the charging army. So unlike the advantage they thought they had, they no longer did. And the king's army was destroyed, King Jabin's army. And then General Sisera saw that his army was losing, and he ran away. He was on his way home when he came across the camp of a tribe friendly to his king. And a woman named Jael invited this general into her tent. So we're probably looking at maybe sort of the town prostitute again, kind of thing. General Sisera asked for something to drink, which Jael gladly gave. And soon Sisera fell into a deep sleep from the exhaustion of battle. Please note what she's got in her hand. It's a hammer and a stake, a tent stake. Jael smiles turned grim. She hated Sisera and his King Jabin. She grabbed a hammer and tent pegs for weapons. So here you can see a little bit what she's got in her hand and the hammer. Hours later, Barak came riding up on his chariot, on a chariot he had captured from the defeated army, and he was looking for Sisera. Jael quietly opened her tent and showed him that Sisera was already dead. And thus, it was two women, Jael and Deborah, that won this war. Well, Sisera made some arrogant assumptions, I guess, about women and about how well he was loved, I guess, in this encampment. But what is so odd about this story is that it is in the Bible at all. It could easily have been edited out. Why do you think they left it?
Excuse me, I don't know why.
I'm still wondering about Barak and his relationship with his mom. And
Yeah.
this is kind of bringing me back to this, because it's the ladies that are, making, they are surviving, they are thriving, they are changing history.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if the parallel between that story and when Barak's mom was choosing his name, whether she had this vision for the kind of future relationship she'd like with her son. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yes, it's kind of interesting that she ended up being anyway a single mom,
yes.
and but even if she hadn't, um, it may have been a kind of sort of feminist way to kind of set, at his birth, kind of set their relationship in maybe a new framework that might not have been so obvious to the generation previous. Maybe.
Yeah,
Any-
I'm thinking about the same thing. It is very odd. And I was thinking of it almost as a protector type of role where she's saying, I will always be with you. And as you go out into the world, you will have the strength of your mother with you, particularly because he is biracial. But then you remember he was actually raised in Hawaii, which is very diverse, and being biracial wouldn't be a big deal at all in Hawaii. So it's really, that's a great question. Why did she choose that name?
I'm kind of fascinated by her because my maiden name is Dunham. I have to go check the family tree and see if I can figure out who she is.
Well, and she was from Kansas.
Yeah. Ultimately. It was a very brave thing for her to do, I think, to marry a Nigerian in the first place. There was a guy in I don't know where, I met him at a church camp, and he came back, we both came back to Denver, and he was in school or something, but a couple of us from church camp had, went out to see a movie together. It was a double dating kind of thing, and I didn't give any thought to the fact until we went to get some gas, and the person who was filling the gas tank at the time and wiping the window, do you remember that?
Yeah.
Just paused. I mean, he froze with the window wiper thing in his hand when he realized that there were two women and one black man in that car, two white women. I mean, it never even occurred to me that this would be anybody's reaction. But if that's was going on, person who chose to marry a Nigerian at that time would have been
a rebel.
A lot more.
And a rebel too. I think he was somewhat of a rebel.
Yeah. I agree. And I suspect there was that part of it.
Did she meet him in the States, or did she meet him in Nigeria? Because I think it
was in the U.S.
I mean, I think
in the U.S.
They were in school. They
Went
were
to
in the
school
same place
together.
in school.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. They were in university together.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
in Kansas.
I don't know if she was in Kansas, but they were in the U.S. and they were in university together.
Okay.
We'll just have to look up where she went to school. We can Google her and find that out.
They went
The
to the University of Hawaii in Manoa on Oahu.
Oh,
And
okay.
Barack Obama Jr., president, was named after his father, Barack Hussein Obama Sr.
Oh, Mark, you know more than the rest of us do.
And it was because they were Muslim, or he was Muslim. So, and then when he converted to, his original name was Baraka, and then when he converted to Christianity, he changed it to Barak.
Well, then this may have no relation to this story at all.
Nope.
Oh, it could, because realize that the Quran accepts the Old Testament.
Yes.
Good point.
Well,
I mean, come on. And it's,
yes,
yeah, I mean, this is Old Testament stuff.
yes.
And it's not foreign to anybody of the Muslim faith. So, yeah, who's really faithful.
They would have read the story. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How many of you had read this story or had discovered it before?
I had-
Yeah.
Well, I haven't, but I bet that's because the Presbyterian Church, when I was growing up, was very patriarchal. I didn't realize Miriam, Moses and Aaron's sister, was important in terms of the spirituality of the people until she got God mad and he made her into a leper. And I think that was a story that got glossed over.
Mhm.
So I think the women in the Bible are fascinating. And I think it shows that, in my way of thinking, is that God is not anti-female.
I remember as a Sunday school student, just a little tyke, how I wanted to hear the Bible story about the judge named Deborah, please. And we didn't hear it very often.
Mm-hmm.
I begged for it, but maybe once every 3 or 4 years would we hear about Deborah, the judge.
The other part of it is it's hard to tell a story where a woman puts a stake through a man's heart. That's, it's hard for children to hear that.
Yeah. Well, you don't meet a lot of women named JL either.
Wasn't that the name of one of the enemies of Superman in the movie?
Might have been.
I don't know.
And that might have more connection to this story than.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I was going to do a longer one too, but I think with the time being what it is, that's what we should do, is just stop. But the fact that she could organize or call for a mustering of arms, during the Judges, they didn't have a united army at all. They just separated into tribes, and when they got into too much trouble, then they would come together and try to form an army and try to throw out the invaders. If they didn't worship Baal, the undertext of all of this then would be that they could control their own country. If people turned to the worship of Baal and Astarte, then God would allow foreigners to take the land, and they'd have to suffer under that, and eventually God would give them the opportunity to take it back. So that's sort of the subplot always going on in Judges, and this is just one incident where the people got together to fight. When we talked about Joshua, and I was saying that Joshua may have been either heavily edited or inserted into the Bible, he is leading a different kind of nation, one where the tribes have subordinated pretty much to a central government that would be run by him. And Judges, I think, shows a different stage, maybe a stage of development in their national, their nationhood or their understanding of being one nation. These are tribes, and they operate independently until they are needed to work together. So
In Europe, we called it the feudal system.
warlords, huh?
Yeah.
Warlords and some kind of royalty to be over that. But anyway, so Barak does it, does what he's supposed to do, and Jael does what she wants, I guess.
Maybe it's what she was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Pardon? Yes.
Maybe
She did what
it's
she was supposed
to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was
No, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I love the story that Barak was the brawn and she was the brain. Or the women were the brain.
Well, I told someone I had to vote for Barack Obama. It was in the Bible that Deborah selected Barack.
Well, she definitely was the brain, but she was also the prophet. And in that time, there was really, I'm sure there were others, but really very few people had God's ear and could receive messages from God. And so she had that. And no one else did. If the story is, if you stay inside the bounds of the story. So
I like Deborah's comment about how to vote. That there's a Joseph in the Bible, but I'm not sure there's a Donald in the Bible.
You're right, because it's a Celtic name. You're right. You're right.
Subject entirely. Who knows what's behind me in my Zoom background?
Something old.
That is old.
It looks like Petra, but it's not in Iraq.
No, it's not. This is, I will tell you, you've normally seen this from a different perspective, but this is the wall of the library at Ephesus.
Oh, okay.
But this is seen, you usually see it from kind of behind where my head is, straight on. The pictures are usually taken straight on, but I'd gone up the hill. I didn't want people in my picture so much, so I was up the hill toward the second amphitheater and shooting back down at Ephesus, the library at Ephesus. Just to change the subject from politics.
Well, there were plenty of politics then, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But the library, I mean, there were very, very few of these depositories, so I didn't realize that Ephesus even had a library. And that's really thankful. I'm really thankful for you for that, because it makes a difference as to what was actually going on there.
Well, Ephesus was very advanced. They had hot and cold running water.
Yeah.
There was an uptown, which is where the laws were made, and a downtown where most people were allowed to be. And interestingly, the library is downtown. It was not in the seat of government. It was where all the people were allowed to be. I thought that was very interesting, very egalitarian. There were two amphitheaters. The large one was for all the people. The small one was for the Senate.
My big memory of Ephesus was I was there on a tour, and when we were there, the Turkish Air Force was conducting drills and using Ephesus as the ground siding.
Oh.
So here we were with these ancient ruins all around us and the modern supersonic jets
Zooming over. Huh?
getting over.
Well, Ephesus is such an interesting place. Our tour guide said, "Oh, pull up a piece of marble. We've got them everywhere." I mean, we're thinking these are ancient pieces of statues, and he goes, "These columns, they're from different eras. People just glued them together, basically. With if something happened to one column, they just took part of a column out of another column and stuck it in there." It was a whole different philosophy about being afraid to touch antiquity, or just pull up a piece of marble and have a seat.
Far cry from Rome. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Pompeii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I was going through pictures like Sandy. I've been going through history, personal history, and was going through pictures and found a picture of one of the true Bernini angels. People think that the Bernini angels are in the St. Peter's Basilica. Those are copies, and the real ones are in the Scottish church, not down the street a ways from the Spanish Steps.
Yep, they are. You're right. Yeah.
Little trivia, pieces of trivia. My mind is full of little pieces of trivia.
As my husband says,
Fine.
little known and less used facts.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things is that we had this incredible guide in a free walking tour of Rome. We had this incredible guide who took us to see the real Bernini angels, but he also took us to the Jesuit church from when the Jesuits were out of favor with the Pope, and they were not a wealthy group. But they wanted all of the pizzazz. They wanted to compete with the Basilica. And so they used trump oil. And that church has way better examples of trump oil than the Vatican museums do. It's really interesting.
Yeah. You got to watch those Jesuits. They'll figure out some way.
Oh, especially when they're fighting against the Pope and the Pope doesn't like them.
Oh my goodness, yes, the Pope was one of their problems.
They have a dome, or what you feel like is a dome in this church. You look up and you say, "My God, it's a dome!" And then if you move just a little bit, you realize that it's a wonderful trump oil. It is not a dome; it is a flat ceiling. But even standing there, you believe that it's a dome over your head. It's really interesting.
Well, I think we better close.
Oh,
Yes.
all right, Mary.
Have a day.
Good
ahead.
job.
Thank you, Mary.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Mary.
much.
All
We
right.
love seeing your little grandchild. He's so cute.
Yes, he's darling.
Yeah. And
It was actually all a ploy so that you could see him. Yeah.
he's gorgeous.
Now we know.